I'm Jackee Taylor, Butch Crouch's daughter, and I'm chatting with Staxx.
Welcome to this episode of Chatting with Staxx. I'm your host, Bill Staxx, and today I got Jackee Taylor.
Hey.
How you doing?
I'm good. Thanks for having me, Bill.
Yeah, thank you for joining me. I see you on a couple shows, and you have a crazy story. I've known about you for a while, and I've been wanting to get you on.
Okay.
Yeah, your father is pretty well known. A lot of people maybe not like him for what he did.
Right.
But there's reasons
I have my feelings about that too.
So do you want to introduce yourself to the people that might not know who you are?
Sure. So my name is Jackee Taylor. My father was a very notorious Hells Angel in Cleveland from about 1968 to 1981. He did, after a lot of things happened in our life, he rolled on the club and he turned to federal witness to be with his family. We were put into the federal witness protection program, and I've been on that since 1982. I've struggled with my identity back in 1982. They did not give me a birth certificate, passport, a social security number from a dead guy in Wisconsin. So I've struggled with that, and I actually got very vocal about it and I guess breached protocol in about 2008, 2009 when my children's Medicaid got canceled because I don't have a birth certificate because of the sins of my father. So this is kind of a crazy mission, I guess, that I'm on now to help rectify the wrongdoings of the marshals in the witness protection program, because I'm a law-abiding citizen. And I deserve to live a life just like everybody else. I deserve to be able to leave the country, to go on vacation, to get married, to buy a home. I cannot buy a home. I cannot buy a home with my identification issues right now. I am flagged. So there's a lot of things that have prevented me from living a normal life. I feel like a second-class citizen. So I've been very vocal about it and have learned a lot about myself, my family, my father. I didn't know 90% of the things that I found out until I embarked on this journey to basically help myself. But now I'm more of a voice to others who still cannot speak. So there's that. That's who I am, Jackee Taylor.
So what was it like growing up in the witness protection program?
This is what I tell everybody. At 7 years old, I was given a new name. I did not really know the circumstances because obviously, like mushrooms, feed them full of shit and keep them in the dark. They didn't tell us a lot. Thankfully, I had no idea who my father was, which he was a murderer or rapist, drug dealer, a pimp. I mean, he was the worst of the worst, and I'll never make excuses for that. But I didn't know that about him. We were just like the movies, yanked in the middle of the night and taken by the marshals and put into a federal safe house in Tampa. And we lived there for a few years. And I shared a picture, the only known photos of inside a federal safe house I have. And I don't know how I have them, but I do. But so we didn't really know what was going on. They just kind of gave us a story. It wasn't talked about really. We were moved to Billings, Montana, and we never moved again. A lot of other people moving, different names, blah, blah, blah. We stayed there and we started a life. But I was told as a child that I had to lie about everything to everyone or I could get my whole family killed. And that, can I cuss?
Yeah.
That was an absolute mind fuck as a child. There's no other way to put it. Because you're always taught, don't lie, don't cheat, don't steal, blah, blah, blah. All of a sudden, I'm told I have to lie to everybody or I will be killed. Growing up with the Hells Angels was comforting and love. And I didn't see that violence. It was family oriented. And these were all my uncles and my aunts and my cousins, and we were always together. And the sound of motorcycles, the smell of cigarettes, all of that, even knives, it was all, everybody had knives, but there were certain things that embodied that club and that lifestyle that were extremely comforting to me as a child. Hearing a motorcycle it was a hum. It was a hum, I lived that lifestyle. And then to be told as a child, if you see a motorcycle, you need to run in the house because they want to kill you. 7 years old, I was told that. And that's, I was scared a lot. I was an outcast. I was way over here. I didn't want to form connections when I started school because I was afraid that I would mess my story up. I was afraid that I would say the wrong thing or say the wrong name. And I tell everybody, there's going to be a lot of comments. Oh, she's really not in witness protection because she's saying who she is. I have no fear anymore. I got over that a long time ago. But my birth name is Jacqueline Angelique Crouch. And they just changed my name to Jacqueline Ann Taylor. And I was so afraid that if I accidentally said Jackee Crouch, I was going to get killed. My family was going to get killed. Maybe, I had a baby brother at the time. So it was hard forming bonds. I didn't trust anybody growing up in grade school. I got bullied. And right around junior high, I got sick of being bullied and I kind of started turning the tables on the bullies. I got angry. I was going through puberty. The hormones were coming up and I got angry and I had questions. Let's backtrack a little bit. My father stayed with us for 1 year after we were put into buildings. He was going back and forth testifying. And then he ultimately went to prison because he actually snitched on himself too. So he, in my mind, he kind of did the righteous thing, but he ended up going to prison after a year with us. So we were
because
on our
what
own.
he was telling the story about the club, and he put himself in some crimes, right?
Well, yeah, he said, and this is what Butch Crouch did, and this I have a lot of respect. I don't respect this, I was in the underworld for a while when I was, back in my bad girl days. A snitch is a snitch. We all hate snitches. But my father tried to do it, I guess, in his mind, make it right. And he confessed to killing an 18-year-old kid in a drive-by shooting. And they had no idea that was a cold case at the time. And he said, well, if I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it right. And, I just gave you all the information about these club members. Now I have to give you information about myself. So he was sent to prison. And that was, he left in 1983. I did not see him again until 2006.
When did you find out that he was a killer or any type of person like this? When did you find out he was like not a good person at the time?
So when he went to prison, he told us children that he was going to work on a boat. That was his story. So he wouldn't be able to talk to us very much. Just when they came to port, he could try to call us and yada, yada. But the real story was, of course, he was in prison. But he didn't want to tell us that. So my mother decided to cover for him because they subject the kids to any more trauma that they're already going through. So we had fantasies about my father. And, when Daddy comes home from work on the boat and Daddy's working so hard. He wasn't working. He was in prison for murdering an 18-year-old. And it got the best of my mother. And she took us to the school counselor. I was about 12. So this is kind of about when I started to, it's like that episode or the movie Me, Myself, and Irene when he kind of snaps in the grocery store. That's about the time that I started to do my little, because you can't, it's hard to live a life like I lived and not let it, just explode eventually. So my mother took us to the counselor's office and told us, your father is not working on a boat. Your father is a murderer and he's in prison. And I'll never forget. And she, bless her heart, she didn't know at the time what she was doing. She was so traumatized. Single mom, can never talk to anybody again, can never tell her problems, trying to raise 3 kids all by herself. She can't talk to her parents, anything. She was losing her mind, and I understand that now. I was mad at her for so many years on how she told us, because I looked at the counselor and the counselor looked at my mom and he was absolutely shocked by how she told us, but it is what it is. That's how I found out that he wasn't a good man. She did not elaborate really any further. Occasionally, if she'd get mad, you're fine, blah, blah, blah. And I learned little bits and pieces, but when I tried to ask her who he was, she wouldn't tell me. So when I started going to college, I enrolled in college. I actually did get into college before the Patriot Act, and that's a whole nother story, begging the admissions board because I did not have a birth certificate. But when I went to college, I did what's called an interlibrary loan. I don't know. Do you remember the old microfilm?
Yeah.
So I looked up Butch Crouch in Cleveland in the 80s, and I found all these articles about him. So I did an interlibrary loan with Cleveland. They sent that over to my college library, and I sat in there for hours and hours, weeks going through these articles, and just, I had no idea. But that was just a fraction of who Butch Crouch was. I learned who Butch Crouch really was after his death.
So walk me through when you meet up with him finally later in life.
So later in life, I had visions of hurting my father very bad. I am half of my father, and I'm aware of that. And as we just talked about that today, the anger, it's still there. I'm still Butch, and it's a constant battle. So I had fantasized about doing certain things to him because of what he did to us and what he did to my uncles and my aunts. And I could never see my uncles and aunts and cousins again. And I missed them, even though I was hiding from them because I thought they were going to kill me. I still miss that life. And
so these were his real family members he told on to?
No. The club life, it's uncles, aunts, cousins. I mean, we're all, to this day, they're still my uncles and aunts.
It's like they're best friends and things like that. Yeah. Was there any family members that he told on?
No blood relatives, no. So I went down, I found his sister down in Louisiana in 2005. I'd had contact with her before, but I'd finally gotten a hold of her, and I went down there to surprise her, to go visit her and to go meet her again as an adult. And, we hugged it out, and it was wonderful. It was a wonderful reunion because I hadn't seen her since I was a kid. Since all this happened, I was ripped away from my family. When I got down there and we hugged, we'd been talking for a few hours, she looked me dead eye and said, "Baby, you want to go see your daddy?" And I'm like, "Yep, I sure do." And all that started spinning. I had fantasies about what I'd been fantasizing about this moment. I didn't want to do the things that I wanted to do in front of my beloved auntie, but absolutely, I'm going to go see him. And the whole drive there was just two of them.
And so did you know where he was when you first went down there? Did you know where he was?
No, he lived 2 hours away from my aunt. So we called him, jumped on the freeway the next day, and I went to go see my daddy for the first time since 1983 when he went to prison. And I didn't have, this is so terrible, I didn't have a weapon with me. So I remember this. I was trying to, what am I gonna use as I'm knocking on the door? And he answered the door, and he's an old man now. He's wrinkled up. He's got no teeth in. He's hunched over. He's crippled up. And I came to see him, and the look of, I can't even describe the look of, I can't believe you're here. And all that anger melted away in a fraction of a second, and there stood my daddy